Hello traders and welcome to another episode of our video series. So today we're going to discuss about objectivity versus subjectivity. So firstly, let's define what objective means. Objective simply means that you have proper facts, you have proper data that will simply give you all the same answers across the board. For example, if there are more than 2 or 3 people, and this is an example of a pure objectivity. If you see the color of my shirt, this is dark blue. Everybody should be able to see this dark blue unless you are colorblind. Now, what if someone says, that's not dark blue, that's orange? Now, we have a problem. Then that's no longer purely objective. That's now being subjective. Subjective simply means that now you're using your own perception based on what you think and what you see fit. So when you're doing your technical analysis, please stop doing this. I want you, especially drawing trend lines. There is a specific way of drawing trend lines objectively, which I'm gonna give you right now. All right, hi guys. So first, let's define what objective and subjective means. Actually, we define that, right? So number one, we define what objective and subjectivity simply means. Two, let's give an example talking about trend lines. First, let's define what a trend line is, mainly an uptrend and a downtrend. Okay, so if I'm going to ask you that question, what is an uptrend or a downtrend? Well, an uptrend is simply a series of higher highs and higher lows. Okay, so higher highs and higher lows. So that's mainly the definition of an uptrend. So very important to note. What is a higher high and higher low? Simply in price, there's 4 different variables, right? You have an open price, a closing price, a high price, and a low price. Number 2, let's define what a downtrend is. There is simply a series of lower lows and lower highs. Okay, so that is what a downtrend is. And let's also define what a series is. A series simply dictates, in terms of definition, there has to be a minimum of 2. So a series of 2 things. So if you have 2 or more, then that is a series. Okay, so let's go through this. Old school way, well, not old school way, the way I've been taught, basically in the past, in order to draw a trend line is by what they have told me is that basically in the past, this was when I started to learn how to trade. If you touch numerous lower highs, then you can basically dictate that. You'll see there. Then you have basically a downtrend. And that if you simply connect as many lower highs as possible, then you'll have, that's how you basically draw an uptrend line and a downtrend line. To draw a downtrend line is simply connecting all the lower highs, and that if you draw an uptrend line, then you connect all the higher lows. All right, so for those who are new, if you're new to trading and you don't know what a downtrend is and what a series of higher highs and higher lows simply means, a series of higher highs and higher lows simply means this. See here, you have a low, you have a high, a low, and that's basically it. So I didn't even want to do that, right? So there's no high. However, if I'm just taking all these, you have a bunch of higher highs and you have a bunch of higher lows. So this is basically saying it's in an uptrend. All right, so you have a series of higher lows and higher highs. What is a downtrend? A downtrend is simply a series of lower highs and a series of lower lows. meaning that the low price is lower compared to the previous lows, meaning that the high price is lower compared to the previous highs. So you have a lower high and a lower low. An uptrend, on the other hand, is a series of higher highs where someone was willing to buy at a very expensive price point prior to the last high. So you have a higher high, meaning that someone was willing to purchase at a higher price compared to the previous high. Higher low simply means that someone was willing to sell it at a higher price compared to the previous low. Okay, so in other words, a seller wasn't willing to drop the price down because it knows that the price of a particular asset is worth more than anything. Okay, so that is mainly what a downtrend and an uptrend simply means, a series of higher highs and higher lows. Okay, so if that is mainly the definition of it, then how can you draw trend lines objectively? Okay, let me just clear all this and let me add in a different chart. Okay, so let me go through here in terms of the euro against the US dollar. Well, to draw things objectively, which I learned this, by the way, after being on the trading floor, and finally I realized that, that makes sense. So if you really want to be objective, and actually one of my mentors basically in the past said, hey, you need to draw your trend lines more objectively. That is not the right way of doing things, not the right way of drawing your trend lines. I'm like, makes sense. So the process I'm going through with you right now is the same process in terms of what I learned. Basically from professional traders. Okay, so because when you're in a trading floor, mind you, you don't see charts. You see two institutions buying and selling instantaneously, basically there and then. It's like going to an auction house. Now, if you're a retail trader, then you need a chart. That's basically could be very so subjective because you only do things the way you see fit based on what you see on the actual chart itself. Okay, so how do you draw a downtrend line objectively? Well, first, you need to identify where the highs are. And then from those identification of the highs or the major highs, that creates basically a peak. Mind you, a peak is, you need 3 points to create a peak. So just you want to imagine 3 bars that creates that high, that creates a higher high, and a lower high. The midpoint, that's your peak. So similar to this, these are my peaks. Okay, so very important basically to note. So if I'm going to draw, I'm going to put in an extension rate right there. So this is the last high within the whole chart. I'm going to click that high and I'm going to connect it to the most recent, like basically from here, this midpoint there. See how it's cutting across? I don't want anything that basically is cutting across. I want the price for the most recent right there. So that's how you draw a downtrend line, or a downtrend line in particular, objectively. How about an uptrend? Well, in an uptrend, there's nothing here because you have a bunch of lower lows. So I'm going to connect and find the last low of the whole chart. To create or to find the lows, or what we call the troughs, you need also 3 bars. So those 3 bars, by the way, here, 1, 2, 3. You need a lower low and a higher low. The midpoint, the candle that's in the middle, that is your trough. Okay, so in this particular case, that is it. And then find this and this. To make things objectively, by the way, is looking at the numbers. Mind you, the numbers, they never lie. Okay, that's what. If you find evidence, find facts, look at the numbers. All right, so how do I draw now an uptrend line? By connecting the troughs or the lows. I've identified that. If I'm going to connect that one, notice that it cut across through this portion. So I don't want that. I want to go through right there. Actually, let me put the magnet tool to make it more purely objective. Right there. So let me double check that this is the actual low. Watch these numbers right here. You have opening price, high price, low price, closing price. What is the low of this one? 105,693. The one prior to that, 105,803. So this low is lower compared to that one. What's this low? 0602. Definitely this low is higher compared to that. Meaning that if you want to know more about price, a seller was willing to sell lower compared to the previous low right there to a buyer, okay? And then from here, the seller wasn't willing to sell it lower compared to the previous one. So that is a clear cut that there is something is happening that could be a potential change of price from the downside to the upside. Okay, so why are trends so important? Trend lines are so important because they also act as your support and resistance to the upside to define basically the trend. So for example, let's go through here. Notice here, after the breakout, your trend line also be utilized and used as a support or resistance. In this particular case, that used to be a resistance became now a support. So after that breakout, and that's also actually breakouts actually happen. And notice in terms of the separation of price from the trend line, somewhere, sometime, the price will touch that trend line somewhere, sometime, basically in the future. By law, they have to do that. Okay, so let's go through and see when was the time that it got basically that this trend line got touched. Bam. So from here, April 10th, 2017, May 28, 2018. A year later, price after notice in terms of separation, it did come back down to touch that uptrend line. All right, so that is how you draw trend lines objectively. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. And if you want to join our trading community, feel free via Telegram. The link is also below. You can also follow me on Instagram and on Facebook. All right, guys, take care until next time. Happy trading. Peace.